We open up to a quiet road in a quiet town, and we eventually come to the high school. Here we meet Ronald Gibb as he goes to his classroom to teach for the day. Ron looks worn out and tired, and he doesn't seem to be looking forward to the day. Yet he trudges along down the empty hallway. Once he gets to his classroom, his students don't seem to be much more eager than he is, but he continues trying to reach out to one of the children. Amber tries to answer the question for Brett, but Ron tries to give Brett as many chances as possible. It turns out that the tough question was, where did Abraham Lincoln give the Gettysburg Address? This boy took forever to say Gettysburg. How many of you are trying to figure out where it happened? Do we have any Bretts out there watching right now? When a teacher sticks around with a classroom full of kids like Brett, you know they either really need the money or really love the topic they're teaching. For Ron, it's the latter. Ron stays to grade some papers at the end of the day, but when he goes to leave, he spies on another teacher that's getting a little frisky with a girl in the other room. Ron only stops because the janitor, Gabe, interrupts him. After that, Ron heads to his car, and he ends up having to leave it there since it won't start. That evening, Ron heads to the bowling alley, and he tries to order a strong drink. The bartender ends up giving him a beer, and she leaves him to it. After that, Ron catches a cab to his house, and he cooks up some burnt bacon for his BLT dinner. Then he heads over to his bed to eat and watch TV. On one of the channels, Phil Palmer comes on to advertise his car dealership, and he uses his daughter, Allie, to help market. Seeing Allie seems to stir something in Ron, and the next day, we see that Allie is actually in his class. I wish my history teacher dressed up to give us historic speeches. I probably would have remembered a lot more of them. You've got to give Ron credit though. He's really giving it his all for these kids, or at least all he's got left. By the time he finishes his speech, the students don't seem to be showing much more enthusiasm than when they started the day, and someone actually throws a piece of bread with peanut butter on the chalkboard. Luckily, the bell rings and Ron takes his seat. He ends up catching sight of Allie's legs as she bends over to pick up her bag, and he watches her as she walks out of the classroom. Ron finds himself in a daze, but Amber definitely helps him come out of it. Later, Ron heads to the teacher's lounge to get a cup of coffee, and he runs into Pete, who tries to make fun of his outfit. Ron promptly leaves the lounge, and that night, he heads to the video rental store. Bet half of you don't even know what a Blockbuster is. Even fewer of you know about the red curtain at the back of the store that he's trying to sneak into. This is where the dirty magic is kept. From the looks of it, the movies on this shelf aren't even that good though. We've done spicier movies on the channel. Ron takes one of the movies to the counter, and the clerk tells him that his card's expired. He calls over his coworker Amber to help him get Ron a new membership card. That's right, Amber is in the high schooler that's in Ron's history class. Yeah, Ron doesn't get the movie. He slips right out without anyone noticing. Can't really blame him. Ron walks home, and the next day at school, Ron has Allie stay behind so he can tell her how good she was in her dad's commercial. She appreciates the sentiment, but Ron isn't finished. He tells Allie that he wants to get a new car from her father, and she lets him know that she's going to tell her father that he'll be stopping by. After Allie leaves, Amber tosses the adult film he was going to get on his desk, and it's clear that she's onto him. She makes a joke about it, and she goes on her way. Later, Ron goes to see Phil, and Phil tries to give him the runaround on some of his better trucks. Phil tries to give him the talk about financing, but Ron tells him that he wants to buy something outright with cash. Phil tells Ron that Allie was right about him being smart, and he tells him that Allie thinks he's the best teacher she's got. Honestly, I'm on the fence of whether or not Ron's a guy that's falling into temptation a little, or he's a full-blown creepy guy. He almost seems like the type that would snatch Allie up and take her away. But he also seems like he's going to be that creepy teacher that just sits at his desk and stares at her until the end of the school year. Sure enough, he buys the Dodge Ram, and he decides to show it off to the bartender, Holly, in the neighborhood when he gets home. Holly tries to tell him that she made enough pasta for two if he wants to come over and eat. But he hurries inside to deal with his box of cash. My god, look at all that cash! That's ridiculous! What if someone came in and stole all of that in one fell swoop? The next day at school, the kids go through their tests, and Ron keeps a close eye on Allie. He starts to fantasize about what he wishes she would tell him, but when she catches him watching her, he quickly averts his eyes. At the end of the day, Ron packs up to go home, but he hears Brett and Allie fighting in the hallway. She tells him that they're breaking up, and Brett tells her that she just made a big mistake. After Brett runs off, Ron comes out to comfort Allie as she cries. She tells him that she doesn't have a ride home anymore, and he decides to offer her one. Gabe is sweeping the hallway, and he watches as the two of them walk off together. While they drive down the road, the two of them talk about how their dreams change as you get older. Ron's logic doesn't quite make sense to her at the time, but when she asks him a personal question, Ron opens up a little more. He talks about his previous marriage that didn't work out, and Allie talks about how her mother died when she was younger. See? This is a completely innocent and probably very helpful ride and talk. Allie probably needed a conversation like that right about now, and he pulls right up to her house to let her out. Ron's tough to read. Whoa, wait. He hands Allie her graded test, and she reaches right over and kisses Ron right on the mouth. Then she turns around, says that she shouldn't have done that, then gets out and says his truck is mad sexy. What? If anything, these mixed signals are gonna fry Ron's little brain. Ron smiles as Allie heads inside, and Allie goes straight to the kitchen to get a drink. After she pours herself a drink, Allie notices a ball roll by in the dining room. She cautiously walks over to investigate, but a man creeps up behind her and throws a bag over her head. The next day at school, Ron is in a much better mood. But when he gets to his classroom, the principal is waiting with the police. Dick and Carl introduce themselves, and Ron sits down to answer some questions. Dick asks what Ron did with Allie, and he tells him that she's disappeared. Eyewitnesses said that Ron was the last person to see her the day before, but Ron tells him exactly what happened, minus the kiss. How did the police show up so quickly? Don't you have to wait like 48 hours or something like that before they declare someone a missing person? These dudes were there even before the teacher. Not to mention, search and rescue missions are underway. That's some prompt service. Later, Ron heads down to the basement to see Gabe, but their conversation is considerably short. When Ron gets home, he turns on the TV, and he finds out that the police are treating the case as a kidnapping. Phil comes on the TV to ask for help, but at the end of his speech, he talks about the Allie sale that he's having at the dealership. This infuriates Ron, and he grabs a skillet before hopping in the truck. Ron goes to Phil's house, and he bashes the mailbox with the frying pan. When Phil comes out, Ron accuses him of using Allie's kidnapping as a marketing ploy, and the police soon show up to take Ron away. At the station, Ron tells Dick that Phil is just a self-serving monster, but Dick wants to know more about Ron as a person. He asks where the cash came from for the truck. Yeah, I want to know too. Dick says that the bank doesn't show any withdrawals from Ron, so that means the cash didn't come from his teacher salary. Something fishy's going on here. Ron tells him that it's insurance money from a car accident his wife died in. Dick tells him that Phil isn't pressing any charges, so Ron starts walking home. On his walk, Brett spots him as he drives by, and he tells Ron that he liked what he did to Phil. By the end of the walk, Ron knows a little more about how tense the relationship was between Phil and Brett, but he continues walking home. The next day at school, all of the students start whispering around Ron, and when he gets to the teacher's lounge, all of the teachers are ashamed of him. Oh crap. Someone took a picture of Ron kissing Allie and posted it in the paper. Go find Amber, she's the only one with a camera. This is before smartphones. Ron immediately comes out of the lounge and looks for Amber. He even follows her to the bathroom and has some other students wait to be the witnesses. He asks Amber why she printed the picture, and he smashes her camera. Just then, the principal comes in, and she takes Ron to her office. She tells him that she's going to be suspending him, and Ron admits that he had an innocent crush on Allie. After that, Ron starts walking home again, and he turns on the news when he gets home. Ron sits there stewing, and the rest of the town starts to show more support to find Allie. We finally get a glimpse of Allie, and she looks like she's in a supply closet. Gabe! It's gotta be him. He told Ron that he's newish at the school, and he has eyes all over the school. Later, Dick and Carl show up at the dealership to talk to Phil, and they tell him that things look more like a runaway situation. Phil makes it clear that Allie didn't run away, and he asks them about Ron. Dick tells him that Ron looks clean, but there's not much more they can do here now. Elsewhere in town, Ron goes to the bowling alley, and he gets a beer from Holly while Pete tells him that it's not his fault that he's attracted to his student. After Pete smacks Holly's behind, Pete gets kicked out, and Ron follows him out. He asks him more about what he meant about it not being his fault, and Pete lets him know that he's got 2 juniors that he's sleeping with. Pete tells him that Allie was only acting like she was into him so she could get a good grade, and Ron walks off. Does it really matter what it is? It shouldn't be happening. Ron's over here worried about the reasoning behind the misdeeds. This bowling alley's bumping tonight. Phil comes in and gets meals for 2, even though it's just him at the house now, and Brett comes in for 2 fillies, even though he's single now. What's going on? Back in the supply closet, Allie stirs, and someone comes in. The man comes in with a bag of food, and they take the blindfold off of Allie. This is starting to feel like a bad Scooby-Doo episode. I feel like at the end, people are gonna gather to see who the monster is. At the movie rental store, Amber checks out Phil's movies, and she tells him that there's a hot sex scene in the movie. The two of them act very friendly towards one another. Back at Ron's house, he comes home to find Holly washing some graffiti from the house, and he tells her that she doesn't have to clean it up for him. Ron goes inside and leaves Holly outside, but he opens the door back up to invite her in. Holly comes inside, and Ron opens up to her a little bit before she tells him to stop driving himself crazy. He tells her that he knows that he's been terrible to Holly, but she assures him that he's the one that he's being terrible to. Holly leans in to kiss him, but Ron pulls away and says that she doesn't know him. Holly's offended by this, and she shows him just how much she actually knows about him. She knows that he's hurting, and she promises that everyone else is hurting too. She tells him that he needs to start being a man, and he needs to start living his life. He should have just grabbed her and kissed her right there. He creeps in nice and slow, so I guess that's a start for someone like Ron. Holly doesn't mess around with her motivational speeches though. Points to Holly. In the morning, Holly wakes up in Ron's bed, and she calls out to him. Holly turns on the news and she finds out that Ron's holding a press conference to defend himself and rally the town to find Allie. Ron took all of his savings, and he tells the town that when Allie's found, the person who finds her will get all of the money. That's $68,000. I kinda wanna hop in the TV and find Allie myself now. After the press conference, Dick brings Ron in, and Phil barges in to accuse Ron of more slander. He messes up by mentioning the DVD that Amber brought Ron, and Ron starts to piece some things together. Later at the video store, Ron shows up to talk to Amber, and he brings her a new camera as his way to apologize. Then he accuses her of talking to Phil about his private matters, but she speeds off in her car. Amber drives straight to Phil's house, and she looks around for Phil. When she gets to the bathroom, she finds her own mother kissing on Phil in the bathtub. When Phil gets out to chase after Amber to smooth things over, they hear a car alarm and find that someone has stabbed a ransom note into Phil's tire. This went from 0 to 100 real quick. Amber's mother isn't even flinching at this though. Well, the ransom note wants Ron to meet up with the money, and now Phil is Ron's best friend. Go figure. Feel like Phil isn't going to get a happy ending here. Ron agrees to take the money to the kidnappers after making some demands of Phil. The next night, Ron gets ready to make the exchange, and the police are waiting outside as backup. Ron goes up to the bowling alley, and eventually a hooded man shows up and tries to take the money. Ron presses the guy, and he ends up finding out that it's just Brett. Ron tries to get him to run away, but someone shoots him in the woods. Dick rushes over to check on Brett, and he has Carl call an ambulance. From a vantage point, we can see that Phil is the one that shot Brett. Back in the supply closet, Allie gets another visit, and the hooded person cuts a piece of her hair. This is literally a live-action adult-themed Scooby-Doo. I'm down for it though. I'm ready for the reveal. Everyone is too obvious. The next day, Phil gets home to find that the door to his house is ajar. When he goes inside, he pulls out his gun and starts to sweep the rooms. Eventually, he hears moaning from one of the rooms, and he bursts in to find Allie tied up on the bed. He unties her and holds her close. The next day, Phil goes to work, and he finds Carl waiting for him in his office with extra units. Apparently, Amber's mom alerted the police about his misconduct with Amber, and they're there to arrest him. Oh, snap. Amber had pictures of all of it in her diary. There's no getting around picture proof like that. Bye-bye, Phil. Back at school, Ron starts to pack up his belongings, and Allie soon comes to visit him. They check on each other, and Allie thanks him for everything he did to get her back. In the end, she wishes him luck on his time away, and she goes to meet Brett in the parking lot. When Ron leaves, Peter tries to ask for advice on how to get with Allie, and Ron punches him in the gut. At Ron's house, Holly is there cleaning up, and Ron makes sure that she's packed for their little trip. This is nice and all, the closure and everything, but who did it? They better not leave that open-ended. As Ron drives down the road, he holds his hand out and lets go of Allie's hair. It was Ron the whole time. See? I knew he had that super creeper potential. Then, the credits roll. This was a weird one that was definitely from a different time. This wouldn't fly nowadays, but as a film, it was pretty solid. Give it a shot. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.